What comes to mind when you think of camping? A tent? A fire? A peaceful night under the stars? That's what the people in these entries thought. But when you hear something, a voice, a footstep, something that shouldn't be there, something that you can't explain, now your once peaceful getaway has shifted and you are quickly reminded just how vulnerable you really are. A few friends and I had an extended long weekend, 5 whole days off, so we decided to go camping in the North Georgia mountains. We packed a massive 10-person tent. There were 5 of us, 2 guys and 3 girls, just for context. My buddy and I had grown up in the outdoors, camping, hiking, hunting, all of that kind of stuff, so I would say that we were experienced. We packed really well and had all sorts of amenities, like a propane grill, fold-up cots, hell, even a portable shower. We were locked in it for the whole weekend. We left Wednesday afternoon, parked the truck in a small town, and then started hiking into the woods to find a spot. It was a fairly normal hike until we hit the 4 to 5 mile mark. That's the first time we noticed something strange. We came into a little clearing in the woods with a big pond, or a tiny lake, whatever. We stepped into the open area and everything just stopped. No birds chirping, no squirrels running around. It even seemed like the clouds had stopped moving. My buddy and I both thought, well, shit, there's gotta be a predator nearby. So we dug out our handguns, our completely legal handguns. I have never seen a bear in Georgia. I'm aware that they are there, but in my personal experience, I've never dealt with one. So we figured it must be a mountain lion or maybe some coyotes. My friend and I were looking around the edge of the clearing. Then all of a sudden he grabbed me. He nodded across the water, and when I looked, I saw what seemed to be a woman standing just at the tree line. She was maybe 150 yards away. We assumed that she must live somewhere nearby, and so we just continued walking past the water and the clearing. As we headed back into the woods, I looked over my shoulder at where she was standing, but she was gone. The sounds of the forest returned, and everything went back to normal once we got back into the trees. We hiked for a few more miles and then decided to stop and set up a campsite. It was getting pretty late and we didn't want to get stuck building a camp in the dark. We got everything that we needed unpacked and set up, built a fire, popped a couple beers, and sat down just to hang out. There was a girl that I was interested in on the trip. We had been flirting back and forth the whole day, so after a few beers and the sun was down, we excused ourselves from the fire under the pretense that she needed some help setting up a part of the tent. Completely believable, I know. We started fooling around, but after a few minutes, she stopped and just looked at me funny. I asked her if everything was okay, and she said yeah, it just got really quiet. It was almost exactly the same kind of quiet as earlier, like someone hit the mute button on the forest. We both quickly got dressed and headed back outside to the fire. The others hadn't noticed anything strange and didn't mention anything wrong, except joking with us that it took us a long time to fix the tent. The rest of the night was totally normal. But on the first morning, we found that the propane stove had been turned on but not ignited, so it had gone empty overnight, but none of us had used it. The second morning, we noticed some things had gone missing. A lantern we left outside by the fire was gone, along with my crush's sweatshirt that she had left on a folding chair. We figured that we had just misplaced the things, or someone had used them and put them somewhere else. During the second full day, and for those of you that aren't keeping track, it was a Friday. We were looking for a waterfall that we read online was in the area. We were following the river upstream when everything went silent again. My buddy nudged me while we were walking and indicated that up to the top of the hill next to the river. I looked up through the trees and I was able to make out a figure, a woman. The same woman. Same clothes and all, just standing. I couldn't tell if she was looking at us or not, but she was just standing there. My buddy told the girls that he thought he saw a mountain lion following us, and he was going to go scare it off. He hustled up the hill making a lot of noise and came back about 10 minutes later, telling the girls that he had scared it off. He pulled me aside and told me that the woman wasn't there when he got up there. Things were getting weird, but we found the waterfall and tried to put it out of our minds. We hiked back to camp and found it a mess. It wasn't totally trashed, but it was clear that something had gotten into our stuff. We told the girls that it was probably raccoons. We both took our guns to bed with us that night. That night, shit went sideways. I remember waking up to my crush squeezing my arm. I opened my eyes and she hushed me before I could ask what was wrong. There was a complete silence all around the tent. Once my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I looked across the tent and saw that my buddy was sitting halfway up looking around. We both stayed awake for the rest of the night until the sun came up enough for us to start packing our stuff, and then we headed out. The entire hike back into town was eerily silent. There were a couple points I thought I saw the woman through the trees, but never got clear sight of her. We avoided the lake completely. We got back to the truck in what seemed like half the time it took us to get out to the camp. After we were safely on the road back home, the girls and my buddy all started to tell everyone about the moments that they thought they heard/saw the woman all weekend, but were too freaked out to mention it out loud, like she would go away if we just ignored her. The wild part is that none of us could describe her face. It's like it was almost blurry. No idea who she was, but I've never been camping or hiking at night since. As for my crush on the camping trip, we ended up getting married last year, so I guess it wasn't all bad. My husband and I go camping Sunday to Monday because those are the days he has off. The place we go is first come first serve, and since it's the end of the weekend, we're usually some of, if not the only people there. By the time we pulled in, the sun was low, the air was still warm, and that quiet end of the weekend stillness had settled in. You know, that feeling when everyone else has gone home and it feels like the whole forest belongs to just you. That's exactly what it felt like. This time, there were 3 or 4 other groups around, but they were pretty spread out, far enough away that the only sounds we heard was the wind in the trees and the occasional crackle of a distant campfire. The site that we chose was lovely. It was shaded and tucked right up against a hiking trail. It was our first time using our new tent, which, as lame as it sounds, made it that much more exciting. In all of the sites, there's a pretty clear flat spot where it's always best to set up your tent. At our particular site, it was right next to a little hill that led down to the trail. It didn't seem like a big deal, at least during the day. But as soon as night fell, I realized that from the trail you could see straight up under the rainfly and right into our tent. Oh well, we weren't about to move the whole setup. Once the fire died down and our lanterns were off, the space just beyond the hill looked like a deep, creepy void. It was just a solid wall of blackness. But again, oh well. Around 1 a.m. though, things got truly creepy. I was lying there, wide awake, listening to the faint rustling of the branches and trying to fall asleep, when I heard footsteps. Someone was walking up the trail. No flashlight, no phone light, just footsteps in the dark. Footsteps that stopped right outside our tent. First of all, why the fuck would you do that? And second, why would you walk up the little hill right next to our tent, stand there for a full minute, and then turn around and go back? That's terrifying. Things to note about this. The spots are clearly marked, even at night, so it's easy to see which is which. They all have a small light above each sign. This place is massive, and we were about as far back as you can get. We were the farthest back of anyone by far. If they were lost and looking for their spot, and they were really drunk, I guess it's possible, but I don't think so. And regardless, who walks around in the dark? So there I lay, frozen, staring a hole into the shadows through the thin tent wall. My heart was pounding so hard that I could barely hear anything else. For a few minutes after, I kept waiting to hear those footsteps again, but the woods went completely silent. Then, maybe 30 or 45 minutes later, a car pulling into our campsite, gravel crunching under the tires, the doors opening, soft voices. A few people got out and started walking slowly around our site. At this point, I had a hatchet in one hand and a hunting knife in the other, sitting perfectly still, ready to attack anyone or anything that came near my tent. Every sound was amplified, the whisper of the fabric as I moved, the faint hum of their voices, the soft tap of the footsteps circling just beyond the rainfly. We had already packed everything either inside of the tent or locked it in the car because it was supposed to rain. After about 5 minutes of them wandering around and barely whispering, they got back into the car, the engine started, and they drove off into the dark. Nothing else happened the rest of the night. Eventually, pure exhaustion won and I fell asleep. When the sun finally came up and my husband came out of his hibernation, I asked him if he had heard anything that happened the night before. His response was, "Wait, what? I thought I dreamt it." Even if it was something harmless, everything got amplified tenfold and it was terrifying in the moment. And it's definitely going to taint my future camping trips for a while. Back in 2021, my husband and I were camping in Wyoming. It was at the Boyson Reservoir, and we got really lucky we were able to book a beachfront site that led directly to the water. The only downside is that it was very, very far away from all of the other campsites. We were completely isolated from everyone else. At the time, it sounded like a dream come true. But the thing about Wyoming is that it's so desolate. Once the sun goes down, it becomes pitch black and eerily silent. That night, we set up camp, enjoyed our fire, and just took in the peace and quiet. Then, a random SUV with blacked out windows came driving down our road, right into our campsite. They drove straight towards us. My husband waved, thinking that maybe they were lost and needed help, but instead they ignored us completely. They drove down to the beach, stayed there for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then turned around and left the same way they came. Immediately, we both got a bad vibe. My husband told me, throw everything in the car, while he kept shining his flashlight towards the beach. We both had this awful feeling that maybe they had dropped someone off to watch us. We packed up as fast as we could, got into the car, and took off. And right as we were leaving, the same SUV drives back into our campsite. When they saw us pulling out, they started chasing us. Now, if you've ever been on the back roads of Wyoming, you know they're rough, bumpy, narrow, and full of wildlife that can appear out of nowhere. My husband looked at me and said, "I have to go fast. Are you okay with that?" And I said, "Go. Just get us out of here." We were easily doing 80 down these twisting, winding roads, and they stayed right on our tail for almost 10 minutes, until finally, after we passed through the canyon, we lost them. It was easily the most terrifying experience of our lives. To this day, we still think about it and wonder what could have happened if we hadn't trusted our gut. At first, we thought maybe we were just being paranoid, but then we started thinking about it a little more. First, we tried to engage them. They ignored us and sped past us. That's red flag number 1. Second, our campsite was completely isolated. Why would anyone drive all the way down to our site, sit by the beach for a few minutes, and then leave? You can't reach any of the other campsites from there. If you come down that road, you're coming for us. That's red flag number 2. And third, they literally chased us for miles once we left. That's all of the confirmation we needed. So yeah, suspicions confirmed. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.